Okay, welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be diving in.
So today we're doing, well, exactly that, a deep dive into just one source.
Uh-huh.
We managed to get a briefing document from USA Today, and it's dated May 24th, 2025.
Right. A specific day's news snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. And our mission really is just to unpack it, pull out the most, important pieces of information.
And help you get quickly informed about what was going on, what the key issues were, just based on this one source from that day.
Couldn't have said it better. And it's quite a mix, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It touches on economic shifts, trade stuff, these nationwide protests.
Immigration, too.
Right. Immigration policies, and then a few other kind of notable news items as well.
It really gives you that sense of, like, everything happening at once. So let's just get straight into it. What does this briefing tell us?
Where should we start?
Well, first up, the economy. It seems to feature pretty heavily.
It does.
The briefing mentions President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. What did the source actually say about its immediate effect?
Okay, so according to this USA Today briefing, the act, quote, rattled the bond market.
Rattled it, okay.
Yeah, and pushed investor skepticism to the brink. Now, for anyone listening, the bond market getting rattled usually means, uncertainty. Investors aren't sure about future debt value.
Right, that sounds
Right.
significant.
It does. And the briefing says this uncertainty is causing global concerns. It specifically mentions worries for Wall Street and international markets.
Wow. So not just a domestic thing.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Sounds like this bill really introduced a lot of financial turbulence, according to this report from that day.
Okay. Skepticism to the brink is pretty strong language. But the briefing also gives another angle on economic worries, right? Something from Elon Musk.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of a contrast. The briefing notes Musk put forward a strategic plan.
Aimed at what?
Well, his stated goal, according to the source, is to help America avoid falling into recession.
Okay, which was a growing concern.
Seems so. The briefing mentions that fears of a U.S. recession were reportedly up by 43%. That's quite a jump.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Plus, there's the backdrop of ballooning government debt mentioned in the source.
So what's Musk's approach then?
His idea, as the briefing describes it, involves proposing a Department of Government Efficiency. Apparently, he calls it DOGE.
DOGE.
And his bet is on expansion, not reductions. That's the phrasing used.
Interesting. So you've got this one big bill apparently causing market jitters, skepticism,
Right.
and then you have a figure like Musk pushing a different idea, efficiency, growth, trying to counter those recession fears and debt worries.
Yeah, it really highlights, different strategies being floated and the kind of reactions they were getting, at least as reported in this specific briefing.
Shows a real tension in how to tackle those economic challenges.
Exactly. Different paths being proposed.
Okay, so moving from that domestic economic picture, which sounds pretty complex, that health is often tied to international relations. And the briefing highlights one relationship in particular, the one with Japan.
Yes, and it's framed quite interestingly. The source actually quotes Japan's chief tariff negotiator,
Oh, saying what?
saying that the U.S. recognizes Japan's importance for its economy. So this is coming from the Japanese side.
Amid tariff talks, you mentioned.
Yeah, the briefing notes it's in the context of ongoing tariff discussions.
Yeah.
And it underscores, from their perspective, the reported significance of U.S.-Japan economic relations.
Right. It's always good to remember these things are viewed differently depending on where you sit.
Absolutely.
And on a more, let's say, concrete level for U.S.-Japan ties, the briefing also mentions a specific business deal getting the green light.
That's right. President Trump's endorsement of the merger plan between United States Steel Corporation and Nippon Steel.
Okay, a major merger.
Yeah. And according to the briefing, it's being presented as something that could provide an economic boost.
And strategically.
It's seen, or at least reported as being seen, as a strategic move to strengthen the U.S. steel industry.
So within the broader trade context, you have the specific deal being highlighted as potentially a positive for the U.S. steel sector, according to the source anyway.
Exactly. A specific development noted in the briefing.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Back to domestic news. The briefing talks about nationwide protests, civil unrest. It mentions something called the May Day Movement USA demonstration.
Yeah, the briefing describes this quite specifically. It says it's a 247 nonviolent demonstration on the National Mall,
24/7, so ongoing.
apparently. And the reported goals are very direct. They're calling for the, quote, impeachment and removal of President Trump.
Wow.
And they state their aim is to hold leaders accountable, and restore constitutional integrity. So, not just a quick protest, the description implies a sustained presence with very clear political objectives, as laid out in the source.
And the briefing presents this. This wasn't just happening in D.C., right? It mentions broader protests.
Correct. It also notes May Day protests across the U.S., more generally.
And was there a common theme reported?
Well, the source indicates these wider protests featured prominent, quote, anti-Trump themes.
Okay.
Demonstrators were reportedly expressing anger over the administration's policies and attempts to push the limits of presidential power.
So it suggests that the demonstration on the Mall is maybe part of a larger wave of dissent reported across the country that day?
Yeah, that seems to be the implication. Similar reported motivations happening in multiple places.
Right. Seeing these reports of, widespread civil unrest focused on the administration, that definitely adds another layer to the political landscape described in this briefing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's turn to immigration, another area where the briefing reports some significant developments.
Yes, and one thing that really jumps out is a specific warning from economists.
A warning about what?
They reportedly state that deporting hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans could devastate the U.S. economy.
Devastate. Strong word again.
It is. And this warning is tied directly to a specific policy proposal mentioned. The Trump administration's plan to cancel temporary protected status for 350,000 Venezuelans.
Okay, TPS. That's temporary protected status.
Exactly. It's a humanitarian status. Lets people from certain countries in crisis live and work here legally, temporarily.
I see.
So economists, according to this briefing, are raising alarm bells about the potential economic fallout of ending that status for such a large group. It really highlights the economic dimension of immigration policy.
Yeah, that connects immigration directly to those economic impact concerns we talked about earlier.
Right.
And there was also legal development mentioned related to immigration and education.
Yes, the briefing notes that a federal judge has paused President Trump's plan to revoke Harvard enrollment of foreign students.
Paused it. So a legal challenge.
Seems like it. The source presents this as part of ongoing legal battles related to immigration and education policies. So this specific court action is shown as like one piece in a bigger, more complex legal fight over various immigration-related policies, including those affecting students.
Okay, so we've hit some major areas. The economy, trade, the protests, immigration, complex stuff. The briefing also had a couple of other sort of notable items, right, giving a wider picture.
Yeah, a few other bits and pieces. First, there's a report looking globally, travel and tourism sector in 2025.
And what's the story there?
Well, the source says it's on the verge of an unprecedented breakthrough.
Breakthrough. Sounds positive.
It does. Driven by spending from international visitors, apparently. This is reportedly leading to record growth in jobs and economic impact.
Interesting. Any specific regions mentioned?
Yeah, the briefing names the U.S., along with China, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, as the key areas reportedly powering this rebound.
Huh. So a potentially booming global industry, kind of cutting across some of the domestic anxieties, maybe.
That's the picture painted in that particular report, yeah. A positive global trend.
Okay. And finally, something totally different. Sports.
That's right, the French Open 2025. The briefing mentions it's set to start on Sunday.
Just around the corner from May 24th, then.
Exactly. And it points to specific headlines that were apparently drawing attention even before the tournament started.
Like what? Player news?
Sort of. According to the source, it includes reports of doping cases, a lingering lawsuit, and also players seeking more slam money.
Ah, so the off-court stuff. Business and controversy.
Yeah, it gives a little peek into the drama and the business side surrounding a big international sports event, as reported that day.
Okay. And while that seems to cover the main ground from this USA Today briefing for May 24th, 2025.
Yeah, I think we pulled out the key details and insights reported in the source. We looked at those mixed economic signals, the volatility.
Right, and the trade relationship dynamics, especially with Japan.
Then the details about the domestic protests, their stated goals, the anti-Trump themes reported.
And those significant immigration policy debates and warnings.
Plus, yeah, that look at global tourism potentially booming and a little bit of French Open pre-tournament buzz.
You know, looking at just one day's briefing like this, It really does give you a concentrated snapshot.
It does.
All these complex forces, domestic, international, all interacting, and understanding these specific details reported, like how a bill supposedly hits the bond market, or what a protest group says it wants, or the economic worries tied to an immigration policy.
It helps you see the connections.
Exactly. Gives you a better sense of the landscape on that specific day. It's a fast way to get informed on the key dynamics the source was highlighting.
Agreed. You see how these different threats, even if they seem separate, kind of weave together into the bigger picture, the challenges being faced.
So, just thinking about everything we've discussed, based only on this single briefing, here's something maybe for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
Given that this briefing highlights, on the one hand, significant economic anxiety, market reactions, expert warnings about impacts. And on the other hand, it also reports widespread civil unrest, directly targeting the administration and its policies. What might having those two distinct sets of facts reported together in just one day's news suggest about the underlying challenges facing the nation at that moment, according to the source?
That's definitely something to think about. The combination of those two things reported side by side.
Yeah, just something to mull over.